Hello everyone, it's Dale here, and in today's video I'd like to talk about fair value gap. A fair value gap is a concept from smart money analysis, and I'm also using that in my volume profile trading, and today I'd like to show you how you can implement that into your trading as well. So let me start with a little definition of what the fair value gap is. Let me do a little drawing here. Basically, this is based just on price action, and you need 3 candles. So let me draw them real quick. This is a bullish scenario of a fair value gap. This is candle number 1, this is candle number 2, this is candle number 3. And what you need to see here is this gap between the low of this candle and high of this first candle. Right? And if there is that gap between, if they don't overlap, then this whole area, that's a fair value gap. This whole area. It's important that the wicks don't overlap. So if the wicks were, for example, like this, if they overlapped, then there would be no fair value gap, right? This was the bullish scenario. Now let me draw the bearish scenario. It is the same, only reversed. This is candle number 1, this is candle number 2, and this is candle number 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Now, because the low of the first candle and the high of the third candle don't overlap, then the space between is a fair value gap. This whole zone is a bearish fair value gap. Now again, if the wicks overlapped, like this, for example, then there would be no fair value gap. Alright? But because it is like this, they don't overlap, then we have the fair value gap. Now, why I'm talking about the fair value gap? Because the fair value gap represents strong support or resistance zone. In this scenario, in a bearish scenario, you would wait for a pullback, and this would be a resistance zone. So you would expect the price to react somewhere from this zone. Now, the way I trade this is for this bearish scenario. I like to go short from this place, from this border of the fair value gap. This is short zone. This is short. Now let me quickly draw the bullish scenario again. For example, like this. In this case, this is the fair value gap, and you wait for a pullback, and this should work as a support, and you go long from there. I personally take my long from this place, from the beginning of the fair value gap. Alright, so this is the bullish scenario, and this is bearish. Right? Now, what the fair value gap represents is a place of aggression where sellers or buyers were really aggressive. They were pushing the price their way aggressively, and that's why the price likes to react to this place, especially to the beginning of the fair value gap. That's, as I was saying, is where I trade from the most. Now, I don't trade the fair value gap as a standalone setup, but I combine it with volume profile setups. Let me just go to the chart and show you this indicator which automatically draws the fair value gaps. I currently have it so it only shows the fair value gaps that are still active, that haven't been tested yet. So for example, if you look in here, let me zoom this in some more. So this candle, that's candle number 1. Below that, that's number 2, and the next one is candle number 3. As you can see, there is that gap between the low of the first candle and high of the third candle. So this is the fair value gap. this whole zone, right? And that indicator draws that automatically. Now, for a bullish scenario, you can look in here, this candle that's first, this is the second, this is the third, and the gap is in here, between the high of the first candle and low of the third candle. That's fair value gap. This one is bullish fair value gap, right? So this is how the fair value gap looks like. As you can see, the indicator draws them automatically. It draws only fair value gaps which haven't been tested yet. Those are the ones that I'm looking to trade. Now, I like to combine this with volume profile setups. Let me show you on a couple of trading levels that I currently have here. Let me actually start with a trade which I sent you a couple of days back on the euro dollar. This was the gap, this zone. The indicator no longer shows it because it has been tested in here. But there was this gap, and I also used volume profile here. And the volume profile showed me that there was a heavy volume zone within strong rejection of lower prices, within this rejection, which is an important sign of strong buyers. And at the same time, there was that fair value gap, and the low of the fair value gap was in here. This was the low of the fair value gap. And as you can see, this very nicely aligns with the volume profile here, right? With that volume cluster here. And it was the combo of those two, the volume profile and the fair value gap, that told me that this is a strong level to go long from. And that's why I entered the long from here, as I showed you in that video a couple of days ago. All right, so that's how I combine volume profile and fair value gap. But this is a trade which has already played out. Let me now show you a couple of examples of levels that I currently have and that haven't been tested yet. And if you look here on the euro 30-minute chart, then there are two levels. The short one is this one. This is the short level at 1.1156, and it is based on the heavy volumes in this area. And there's the beginning of that fair value gap, right? This is the fair value gap, and this is the beginning of the fair value gap. So there's a nice combo of volume profile and fair value gap. Right now I just wait for that pullback and go short from there. Also, there's a long level. The long level is at 1.1097, this one. And again, it is based on volume profile, on those heavy volumes here, and on that fair value gap, which is this greenish zone here. The bottom of that green zone is here. All right, so as you can see, it very nicely aligns with the volume profile setup. My level is just a couple of pips below that fair value gap, because if the price comes here, I think that it will want to at least touch those heavy volumes here, so that's why I placed the level a little bit lower. So that's my long level. I expect the price to react from there and go upwards. Now here is another chart. This is Australian dollar, US dollar. Again, the software shows the fair value gaps, so they are nicely visible here. And in here, this long level that I have here, 0.6750, is based on heavy volumes formed within this rejection of lower prices, and also on that fair value gap here, right? Now, let me show you one thing. As I was saying, if you remember, this is a formation of 3 candles, but sometimes there are actually like 2 gaps, one after another, like in here, because there would be a gap like this one, and another gap would be this one, right? The first gap would be based on those 3 candles, and the second gap would be based on those 3 candles. If you see 2 gaps like this, one at the top of each other, then I look at it as one big fair value gap. And in a long trade scenario, I trade from this level, from the beginning of that gap. Alright, that's where my long level is. It is a combo of the volume profile and the fair value gap. Now another market is US dollar, Canadian dollar. In here we have a bearish scenario. We have a huge gap. Again, I count this as one huge gap. The bigger the gap, the better, because the bigger the gap, the more strength was behind the move the gap is based on. So this already shows aggressivity and strength of sellers, and that's what I like to see when I'm trading shorts. So in here I have this heavy volume cluster within this rejection zone, as well as that fair value gap, right? And for a short trade scenario, this is the place I want to go short from, the beginning of that fair value gap, right? So that's the fair value gap. No, actually just this is the fair value gap, and I want to trade shorts from the beginning of that fair value gap, like this. Very similar case, just really quickly, is on the US dollar, Japanese yen. Again, I have a long level here, this long level based on this fair value gap. This is the beginning of that fair value gap at 142.30, and again we have a nice heavy volume zone here, so that's why I picked a level to trade from there. So now I'm just waiting for that pullback and then I'll go long. Now I'm not sure if I told you, but gaps which have been tested in the past, I'm not interested in them anymore, and they don't show on the chart. The indicator doesn't show them. I'm only interested in gaps which haven't been tested yet. All right, those are the ones that the indicator prints. Now let me show you one more example of a trade which I had. It was on the NQ, and it was actually a prediction which I sent you earlier. And that level which I had here was this one from this place. And the level was based on those heavy volumes and also on a fair value gap. Now, as I was saying, the software doesn't show it anymore because it has been tested, but I'll draw it for you because the gap was from here to here. This was the fair value gap, and the beginning of that fair value gap was in here. As you can see, again, very nicely aligns with the heavy volumes in this volume cluster. Price made a pullback, went all the way to the bottom of the fair value gap, and from there, beautiful reaction. All right, so that's the fair value gap, one of the smart money concepts. If you guys are interested in learning more about combining volume profile and smart money concepts, then you may want to check out the Funded Trader Academy, where me and other traders meet every day in a live trading room, and we teach traders how to trade, how to get funded, and become professional prop firm funded traders in less than 12 months. Below this video there's a link which you can click, and it will lead you to this page, which is the Funded Trader Academy page. There's a video which you can watch. It will show you everything that's included. All right, if you guys are interested, you can then book your call and see whether this would be a good fit for you or no. All right, so that's about that. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you guys liked it. Below this video, I'll also drop a link to download this fair value gap software for NinjaTrader 8 platform. All right, so that's about that. Thanks for watching, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you next time. And until then, happy trading.